What up? Here's a clip that I filmed recently, and I added an effect in here that I think you'll like. Right after this tray flip, check it out. Boom! Watch the camera, what are you doing? So I want to show you step by step how to use Sessions Replay Editor to add this into your own clips. Here's another example. It's all 100% pure keyframe action, baby. Boom, knee to the face. So actually, no further ado, let's grab this. Session is already running, Replay Editor is already up, and I actually filmed the entire clip all the way through, except for the effect, so that you can see me add it on the spot. Here are my keyframes. Let's start it up. And here it is. A big old drop-in at the big old mall with a nice shifty, and there. That's the spot right there where the foot clips into the camera. Now I made sure to film the rest. That's an important part of the setup to add this effect, alright? So, this is the exact moment where you would have the opportunity to make the decision to add this effect, the camera hit, into your clip, alright? Let's just be very clear though. You can definitely save your clip with no issue if you just go to where you're clipping into the foot and slow your filmer down a little bit, alright? If you've been paying attention to my other tutorials, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say slow down the filmer. And make sure that everything else is framed along the timeline, keeping your keyframes well separated, not too close to each other, and there you go. The clip works. The clip is not too bad, if I do say so myself. But here's the thing though. There's this Japanese art called kintsugi, where you take a ceramic pot, a ceramic cup, whatever the heck it is, you throw it on the ground, it explodes into a bunch of pieces, and then you glue the pieces back together with gold. Alright? So you take an accident and you turn it into its own unique, beautiful thing that gives it even more value than it had before. Because it's gold. Alright? So, let's take that mentality and apply it to Session. So here's how I go about integrating the camera hit. Step 0 is film the entire clip, right? Make sure that you have your camera already going, already doing what it's supposed to be doing before and after the event, alright? You're kind of supposed to stumble onto this by accident a little bit, like, oops, I need to fix this, right? But you already have your keyframes set in for the rest. Now, step 1, go to where you're about to hit the camera, alright? You're not clipping into the camera, right? So this would be no bueno. Alright, you don't want to see that, and set in a keyframe. Next, use your cursor to go down the timeline to about where you think the animation will have finished, where the filmer will have stabilized their camera, and put in a keyframe there. Make sure it's centered as you wish. Between these two keyframes that we just added, that's where the magic's gonna happen. So here, you go to your keyframe where you're about to hit the camera. Step 2 is move forward just a tiny bit and watch the foot motion, right? What's hitting the camera? The foot in this case. Where is it going? Upright. So, camera goes way upright. And you see we're clipping into the foot? That means slow down the filmer just a tiny bit until you're not clipping into the foot. Alright, we're still clipping. Maybe even bring the camera up a tiny bit, and hold your right bumper, hold your right trigger, rotate the camera way out there. Make sure you still kind of see the foot in this next keyframe, alright? It really has to be very close. Now, mind the gap between these two these two keyframes. From this keyframe that we just added, scrub forward and go about 2/5 of a way in, and this is where you really have to simulate how it goes when your camera gets hit. Alright, so you're the filmer, your camera got hit, it got slapped and rotated out of the way. It's not gonna snap back to reality, oh there goes gravity. it's going to overshoot. You're going to try to resist the hit. You're going to try to overcompensate, and you will overshoot. Not only will you overshoot the angle, you will overshoot the rotation as well. And that's what we're doing here. Bring it back down, overshoot it, overshoot the angle and the rotation, put in your keyframe. That technically for the camera movement would be it. Let's see if we have to make a small adjustment here or there. That looks savage. That looks violent. All right. I don't even know if we see any clipping. Is there clipping though? Okay, we're clipping into the foot a little bit, but it kind of doesn't really show. In fact, it adds to the flavor, the visual flavor of it. It's very violent. Right, okay, and we see the foot. This is actually so good. You see the foot coming. You're like, you want to flinch away. Okay, so this is good. We have a hit. If you want, you could be satisfied with just that. All right. Oh, wait a second. Here. I don't like how after all that savage movement, it just snaps back to perfectly stable. All right. So, kind of a bit of an improv on my side here. Gonna go to this keyframe where the stabilization should have ended, and I'm going to give it extra rotation, right? So what happened now is camera got slapped away, we brought it back, and it was over rotated. Now we're trying to stabilize, and it's a little bit over rotated still before getting back to neutral. Let's see if this works better. Oh yes, now that looks really good. Now that looks really like the filmer's struggling to keep up. Okay, and they're swearing at the skater for hitting that $1,000 equipment. So, this is good. Now it's time for the final touch, the thing that makes it really chef's kiss, alright? From here, go to the keyframe where you're about to hit the camera. Now, go on to your depth of field timeline, add in a keyframe here. Go back to your camera keyframes, and move to the next keyframe after getting hit. Don't do anything here, but instead, back to the depth of field, add a keyframe here. Back to the camera keyframes, move one keyframe forward, and back to the depth of field. Put in your keyframe. This technically would be enough, but I prefer to give myself a little bit of wiggle room, so I do one extra keyframe at the end and one extra keyframe at the start. All right, so we have these 5 keyframes, but we're mainly going to be working on these 2 and the next one, so these 3. So the one after you got your camera hit, this one, bring it down to absolute 0 or 1 is the lowest possible value. All right, now notice the second you're going to go back on the timeline, even just 1 frame, it's perfectly focused. That's because you're going from 1000 to 1, right? So bring this one, the one where you're about to get hit, down to the lowest value possible without losing any focus. All right, so I'm at 11. I still feel like there's focus here. I'm starting to lose focus at 10. If I bring it up to like 11 or 12, I think that would be good enough. Now if you go in, the hit gives the fade out of focus. Let's do the same thing for the keyframe where the camera has overshot its stabilization. We're gonna bring the focus as low as possible without losing any actual focus. So bring it down to 1. At 11, I still see those lights in the back. They're losing some focus. So at 12, everything seems to be fine. Now let's see. So this is something that could have happened, and it did happen. Murphy's Law. So it stays completely out of focus, and then just before hitting the keyframe, it gets into focus. This is something that didn't happen in the previous clips that I showed at the start of the video, but I knew it could happen, so I left myself this wiggle room. We're instead gonna use this keyframe to bring it a little bit out of focus. Let's say 7 or 8, all right? And the next keyframe, we're gonna bring this one down to, let's say, 13. Alright, something like this. Now it should give us a much better effect. Alright, the camera is struggling to understand what just happened. Alright, so this is good. I think if I lower this just a tiny bit more, it'll work in our favor. Okay, so yeah, and that's it. That's it. So the full clip with a camera hit would look like this. Mongo Mall, drop in like a madman. Big old shifty ollie like nobody's business. Slap the camera. Nollie flip back lip. Call it a day. That's amazing. I love how this looks. This is fantastic. And this shifty is nothing to joke around with. But man, yeah, okay. So that's how you integrate it. It's very tricky. It's very precise. But there's a method to it, alright? As you can see, there are steps. And if you respect them, you will get something very, very similar to this. Or you'll probably be able to practice just a few times until you get it exactly like that. There you go. So this is what happens when you comment on my videos and when you say, how'd you do that? This is what happens. You get what you asked for, alright? So, do it. Do the thing. Do the social media thing and comment. I love to see it, and it just gives me more stuff to work with, alright? So, nothing else to add. Wishing you patience for your practice, and finger guns. I'll see you in the next one. Finger guns, you know. Alright, back to Dragon's Dogma.